Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Experience Kills. Joining me today is Richard.
Hello.
And I'm Ben, and we're going to be diving deep into the new off-road racing experience by Codemasters titled Dirt 5. Richard, have you ever...
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm really excited. We've both been able to play it. Codemasters very generously provided us with a couple of codes on Xbox, and we've both been playing on the Xbox One X, but we are both very keen to try this on the Xbox Series X, and we will revisit this probably in a podcast. But before we get to that, Richard, have you played any Dirt games previously?
No, I don't think I have. I think I've been put off by them because they looked as if they would be impenetrable for me, like they'd be too serious or something. And I don't know why I thought that, but playing this one, and thank you Codemasters for letting us try it both. I think that's been great of you. I've really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. It's very accessible, it's quite arcadey. It has a kind of Sega Rally vibe in how it controls, so you've got that easy drift mechanic. You told me just before we started recording, it's by the developers of Onrush, and
yeah,
as
by
I was
that
playing
team.
it, I could tell it felt like Onrush before you even told me that. So yeah, it's far more of an arcadey, accessible game than I ever thought it would be.
So yeah, what happened there, I think why you were kind of misunderstood the Dirt games a little bit was because they kind of split them apart. So they now have Dirt Rally, which is where you find your traditional point-to-point, hardcore rally simulation experience, and they split that out from the Dirt games.
They're the serious ones.
Yes, very serious. Very competitive. They even have an online proper like esports scene around them and everything. I think they've actually been running their championships for that recently in the same way as they do for the F1 games. So to give you an idea of the simulation seriousness, that should indicate how hard that is. And it couldn't be further away from the Dirt core series that we have here. I mean, in this we have basically three modes really. We have the career mode, an arcade mode, a multiplayer mode, and the playground mode. Unfortunately, because the servers weren't online, me and Richard were not able to test multiplayer, which is a real bummer because I was really looking forward to giving that a go. But we both did dig into career, and I've obviously experienced playground before. There was a video on the channel in which I had a look at that in an early state, but that hasn't changed a great deal, just a bit more stable with a few more options. But I really look forward to hearing what Richard thought of all that. But first, should we get into sort of like the career mode where we got to really cut our teeth on the racing and the kind of modes that are on offer?
Yeah, let's talk about career first. That's the natural starting point. What do you think about the UI first? Because getting into that, I felt that was a bit weird.
What do you mean?
You can choose from a tree of events. So it starts on the left-hand side, it scrolls to the right, and you've got like a network of events that you can choose from. So the first of 4 you pick, and then they branch off into different events. Depending on which route you take, it will dictate what events you do next time and what route you take to the end of each chapter. And each chapter has its own challenges or whatever. I think there's 5 in the game before you get to the end and open up every tree, every section of that career tree, and then you can go back and fill them all in if you want. But just the way that's presented seemed really weird, because traditionally in something like Forza, you'd have it more compartmentalised. You'd maybe go into different classes and you think, right, I want to do the rally ones, and I'll go in and I'll do those, and then I'll go in and do the 4x4 races or whatever it is, right? But all this, it's just one huge branching list from left to right, so the entire game is presented to you on the screen, and you just seem to be scrolling forever to find what the next events are. It seemed a bit untidy.
I found it a bit redundant because I was just doing all of them. So I would do each sort of vertical section before I'd move on to the next. See what I mean? So it was kind of like, why give me all of this choice? Because I wanted to experience all the different types of racing. And at the end of the day, did you find that there was that much of a difference in those different types? I mean, for the most part, to me, the different types all kind of blended together, maybe except for a couple of sort of outliers. For example, the races on like the frozen Lakes felt different because of that different type of race. It was all about, you know, racing on ice. But the other point-to-point racing was all kind of the same. And then there was some lap-based point-to sort of racing, but even that felt kind of like the point-to-point ones. Like the Land Rush felt a lot like the lap-based ones. It just happened to be over specifically unique tracks. Do you see what I mean? They actually felt at the end of the day like they were all quite similar. You had different types of cars, but at the end of the day you kind of just go in as fast as you can through the mud or the rain or the snow or the ice or the tarmac, but they all felt the same.
I don't know, there's a few that stand out. I mean, some for good reasons, others not so. There's one that I found a little bit dull, which was you just get a regular circular or oval circuit and you've got to drift.
Oh, what was that? I didn't like that. What was that called? Yeah, I didn't like that one.
Yeah, so that was different, but not that interesting, is it?
No.
There were a couple of others that I thought were better. So there's a score-based one where you just in a car on your own in a sort of stunt track.
Gymkhana, yep.
Gymkhana, so you can do donuts and drift through gates and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. But the one that I really liked was the Pathfinder event where you're in like a buggy and you're presented with these ultra vertical courses where you're just trying to climb up and climb up a cliff and work out where the turn is at the top before your car topples over. It's almost like BMXing in a car.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. But yeah, there's some decent variety in there, but I know what you mean. A lot of them do cross over.
I think what I'm speaking to is perhaps that those ones stood out, but they're definitely in the minority. Land Rush, and then which is just a single point to point. You have a percentage indicator of how far you are through the course against another field of I think 11 other drivers, usually in a souped up 4x4 type race vehicle. Those ones are definitely quite prevalent, as is the kind of sort of hot hatch based do several laps of the same kind of course race. Those seem to come up a lot as well. I can't remember what they call them, Ultra Rally or something like that. Right. And those ones seem to be very common as well. Now, this might be because of how I was approaching the career, because I was doing, like I said, all the vertical sections. Therefore, if you just do sort of a linear path left to right, maybe you're going to get more of a sort of distinct variety. But the problem is as well that the gating of how those areas open up is based on you getting the badges from completing the previous races, which I don't think you're going to get enough if you just follow one horizontal path. You're going to have to spread out through the verticals to get enough to actually open up subsequent areas. It just felt it was quite a dry presentation, I think, for what is a very vibrant game when it actually comes to the racing. You obviously have this narration by this AJ character, who I believe is
Troy Baker.
Troy Baker, that's the voice actor's name, yeah. And he's fine. He kind of keeps it fresh, and then the new courses are presented by this, what's it called, the Donut Podcast or something random, which has these two kind of bickering hosts sort of introducing you to the races and stuff like that, and they're quite fun. But, so let's talk about how the driving feels. So, variety aside, I've felt like the driving has been excessively accessible, really easy to get to grips with. It's a kind of racing game where you very rarely kind of need to brake. You're mostly just accelerating and throwing yourself into corners with the handbrake and just like sliding your way around these incredibly beautiful vistas. Like, the environments look absolutely stunning, and I can only imagine how much better this is all going to look on the Series X, because at the moment it just looks incredible. The mud effects, the snow effects, when you have that dynamic lighting that's being created by, say, a snowstorm coming in, and how everything looks incredibly realistic as things get harder to see, as your visibility decreases, the snow comes in heavier. It just looks insane. Like, I can't imagine a game looking this good, this realistic, but at the same time heightened. It's so much fun, and you can see that pedigree of the team from Onrush and how they've come into this, because the use of things like lightness and dark and how that will obscure the track and what your surroundings, and it looks amazing, and it feels really good to drive in.
It does feel good. What you're saying about not needing to brake, I've noticed that too. I'm rarely not even using the handbrake. I don't even know which button the handbrake's on, to be honest, Ben, because all I'm doing is easing into a corner, throwing the weight of the car into it, and easing off the gas as I do that, and then that throws out my back end, and then you power on the accelerator into the corner, and then you're drifting. I don't need to brake at all. So that feels like a really good way to play without sacrificing any speed. So you always feel like you're bombing through, and it's really good fun. That seems to work for most of the car classes to different degrees, and they each feel unique. But that core drifting ability is something that marks this out as something I would want to play alongside Forza. That's always my go-to. I love the Forza games, but I can definitely see this as being a great partner to that, a great companion to a Forza game. You don't need to just have Forza. This is a really good thing to have alongside it. So controls are great. Yeah, what you said about the visuals, there's clearly problems. It's clearly overshooting for this hardware, and it's a bit of a shame that we're having to try it on current gen hardware, because what we both want to do is show off our new shiny Xbox Series X's when they arrive in a couple of weeks' time. This would be a great one to do it on. So while we're playing it now, I can tell there's screen tearing issues in and out. There are some frame rate problems, although you can choose for prioritising frame rate over graphical fidelity in the menus. I presume that on Series X you'll just get all the bells and whistles without having to choose anything.
So on the Series X it goes up to you actually have, this is one of the few games with 120 Hertz/FPS option.
Right.
Whereas if your TV supports that, you can basically go, screw the graphics, I want all the frames ever. So that's one option, but I would imagine on image mode you're going to get a really pretty
60.
Game at 60 at 4K. But I haven't noticed too many issues with screen tearing, to be honest, but I am not the most, or frame rates for that matter, but I am not the most sort of susceptible to those changes. I've never been one of those guys.
I don't. The screen tearing is one thing. I don't think the frame rate is bad. It's because I've built up Dirt 5 as this sort of flagship for the Series X, and it's supposed to look ultra smooth. So it's a bit weird to be playing it first on a One X when I know it's not going to be played at its best.
I see what you mean.
That will come. But aside from those issues, graphically, you can see that it's really doing some serious work there. In terms of the lighting, I've never seen mud as beautiful as this.
No.
So there's a course in China where you're driving through all these beautiful gates with Chinese lanterns hanging over the road, and the road is just a mud track. And as it progresses, the mud gets worse and worse and fills up with puddles, and just the light that was reflected in those mud pools. It just looks so brilliant. I've never seen mud that moves well like proper mud, but also has that sort of reflectiveness as well with the pools within it. So you can see in the puddles those lanterns reflected back, and it just looks so great. I'd never considered that mud would look that good, and that's a theme that you can see through most of the tracks. They've really paid attention to detail in the things that stand out, whether it's the sunlight glinting off the rain flecks as they come into the camera, as you come over the brow of a hill, or how the levels will gradually change as you go through them, whether that's moving through the light cycle from day to night, or whether it's weather changes, so you'll see lightning storms coming in, or a rainbow appear on the last lap, or snow gradually covering the race track as you progress. So you'll see a smattering of white on the mud to begin with, and then it will become layered snow that you're driving through, which affects the dynamics of driving as well. There's a lot to it, while it still maintains an arcade feel, which I think is a really difficult balance to pull off, but they've done it.
I will mention that it's, I think, a real shame that we've not been able to test multiplayer, because I bet this game is a absolute riot in multiplayer. Incredible fun, and I really look forward to jumping in and doing that with you on Series X. But yeah, like I mentioned at the top, sadly the servers are not up. I do, however, want to touch upon the other kind of cornerstone of this game, which I previously covered in a preview video, which I will link to for more detail, as it were. But Richard, tell me about your experience with Playground, because I think that's going to give this some real legs to continue being in your library, because it has so much versatility in what can be created in the Playground mode, and then what you can just dive into and experience what other people have created. So what did you find in that?
I enjoyed that. It seems reasonably easy to use. The tools there are simple. So you get a palette of items that you can lay on the ground, from barriers to ramps, dirt humps, tubes you can drive through, all sorts of different things. I think on the edition that we've got what's it called, the Amplified edition or something. There's some additional stunt elements in there as well, so you can really jazz up your tracks. But there's a couple of different options that you can do there. You can create tracks with different checkpoints, and the objective is to get through all of the checkpoints. And I've tried some pretty cool ones in there, so you can take different routes through a track to hit those checkpoints in different ways. There's stunt-based ones as well, so you can put different stunt items in the track and do donuts around it and whatever.
Yeah. So the Gymkhana thing we mentioned before. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can make your own versions of that. That is fun, and it's difficult to know how to set it up really. But when you've tried your own version, so it's difficult to know how to set them up. But there's once you've tried some of the pre-made ones in the career, you can get a flavour for that's how that works and that's how that pieces together. But yeah, enjoyed it.
It's cool, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, there's some great ones that are already in there, even at this point, made by by some of the early press guys like us, and then also made by the Codemasters team themselves. So there's some incredible examples that are complex, and just the amount of time that they must have put into them. And it's just like, wow, the thing I made is freaking embarrassing compared to that. But I'm much more looking forward to trying other people's stuff and people like yourselves from my friends list and stuff like that, which is really cool that you can do things like that. And there's a lot of depth in here. There's a lot going on in this game for what is an accessible rally-based sort of arcade racer. There's the career mode. There's also, I'll mention the arcade mode as well, because that's basically gives you the option to just pick a location, a race type, and then a track, and just do it. It doesn't have to be done in the career mode, but it'll also give you progression stuff like level, currency stuff, and all kinds of things like that, will add to your progression and your unlocks. So even if you're not going through the career mode, you can do that if you just want to play by yourself. But yeah, I really look forward to getting into versus mode, into the multiplayer side of things, and trying some of those races, but they're just not possible right now. But I'd say this is a big, strong recommendation for me. I had a blast playing this as an arcade racing experience. It's really good fun.
Yeah, I could quibble at some of the track design elements in places. Like there's one particular one where there's some road signs that you traditionally would think as a Forza fan.
Oh yeah, I noticed this. Yeah, I've noticed this. I mean? Yeah, and then all of a sudden you just stop dead, and you're like, oh crap, restart.
Yeah. So some funny things like that, some strange choices about what you can and can't drive through. But other than that, it is a good recommendation, and certainly something I'm looking forward to continuing playing through to the Series X launch and beyond.
Awesome. So that's been another episode of Experience Kills. I've been Ben. You can find me at DIYE. With me today has been Richard. You can find him at Colonel Reg. You can find Experience Kills at Experience Kills. If you've watched this YouTube video, please give us a like and subscribe. And if you would rather listen to an audio version of this, you can find us on any good podcast provider. So I think with that, me and Richard are going to drive off into the beautiful mud-speckled sunset together. The snow's coming down as well, mate, and it's going to be a lovely drive. So see you on the Series X.
Beautiful. It's like Thelma and Louise.
Over the cliff we go. Whee!